Hello, everyone, and welcome to this recording today, during which we're going to talk to and get to know Darren Hunter from Rising a little bit better. And as you can see, we're going to be talking today about SAP S/4HANA and what a big difference that can make in the grocery retail world. I am Sherry Ann Meyer. I'm Rising's head of corporate communications with a background and an interest in how humans interact with technology. I spent a lot of years in human resources technology. And with us today is Darren Hunter. Darren is Rising's global head of business development for our retail practice, and he has extensive experience in this area. In his over 20 plus years here, he has led teams that have implemented SAP at some of the largest retail and wholesale projects in North America, as well as led software development teams at Rising. Now, here's fun fact number one about Darren. When he's not at Rising leading our grocery practice, he is in the grocery store, shopping for his family that includes 5 children. So Darren, thank you for joining us today. Those 5 children, I hope they're going to be listening to this and getting something out of this.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll be listening, but I appreciate the welcome. And you're right. I think I consider myself a grocery expert based on the amount of time that both my wife and I have spent in grocery stores. So we've seen a lot of different grocery stores over the last 20 plus years, and feel like I am consistently contributing to their success.
I detest grocery shopping. I am actually one of those people that is now having it delivered, and I don't care what it costs. So let's get to the topic at hand. Digital transformation, we're hearing about it everywhere. It's essential for any business. But it seems right now, at least to me, that nowhere is it more critical than in grocery. That seems to have changed so much in the past several years in terms of customers' needs and experiences and, what's the best thing to deliver out there. So that's our focus for today's discussion. So we attribute the need for digital transformation to changes in lifestyle we realized from the pandemic. But really, the reality is that what we're witnessing today, all of these things that we're able to do with technology have been around with us for quite a long time. We just haven't really seen people using them until they were forced to use them. People that survived, businesses that survived during this time period, the pandemic, were really able to do so because they were able to respond very agilely, right, with technology. You can't pivot so easily without the proper technology foundation, right, or the mindset towards people, processes, and technology. So that's what we want to talk about.
Yeah, I think I think that's a couple things. The idea specifically around the pandemic was a lot of businesses faced a lot of different challenges. Grocery in particular, because they were deemed essential, had a different requirement than many other businesses did. Many other businesses found themselves with their storefronts closed and you weren't able to enter the premises and those types of things. So there was a big online requirement that was thrust, and that was the only way they were going to succeed. And they had to stand out amongst a myriad of different retailers, right, that you were looking for. Grocery, on the other hand, had this huge demand. All of a sudden, restaurants weren't open. You had to cook from home. So there was this mass sort of demand that just instantly showed up on the door of all these grocers. And for ones that were already farther along the technology chain, that as you mentioned, that technology curve, they were able to quickly adapt to that quick change, right? So if you didn't have any online presence, and all of a sudden the only way people could buy your products was to have sort of an e-com storefront and all those types of things, then you were behind the 8 ball right away. So it was very important to have flexibility and use the term agile, so that quick nimbleness to be able to change, where all of a sudden your promotions weren't in-store promotions. You had to have online promotions right away. You had to look at what products were being purchased by an online consumer instead of traffic to the store. So there was a lot of data requirements. There was a lot more reliance on technology to be able to succeed in that time window. And what we saw was a lot of the grocers that were prepared for that and had a platform already ready to go to allow that nimbleness and that agile behavior succeeded more than the other ones. And I think that is what we're seeing even now as we come out of the pandemic. We are seeing consumers demand sort of something new that's happened since the pandemic, right? There's been a lot of, I don't want to say recoil, but the idea that everything was so hands off, you're online doing everything. People now, I think they realize they enjoy going to stores. So unlike you, a lot of people like now going into stores. They like doing the traffic and having like presentation and I would say the energy of the market and going into having, whether it's a small hypermarket or large supermarkets, they like the idea of going into the store and having the ability to look at things on shelves and touch things on shelves, where that, you know, in 2017, it was neither here nor there whether you really cared about what a grocery store looked like. And now we're starting, the people that we talk to, the clients that we talk to, that's the feedback from their customers, is it's very important now that their fresh produce is filled, right? That their shelves are constantly filled, so that people really wanted to get back into being part of society and part of a group. And so part of shopping into more, I would say, you know, going into locations now, going into storefronts is a big deal for a lot of people that were based on our feedback from our clients.
So you've really described a lot about what's happening in the grocery segment right now in terms of the customer's perspective. What about from the grocer's perspective? Why is it important that they feel they need to focus on grocery and technology right now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of because in the past technology has been very heavy, right? It was a lot to run planning MRP. It took a long time overnight. You had a lot of different. It was a difficult task for a lot of grocers. They wanted to be able to be. They wanted to spend their time and energy as to how the store was doing, not how their back end IT was doing, right? And it was always it's these heavy applications, and I would put SAP into that same grouping. In the past has been hard for people to kind of, oh my gosh, we tried to do a planning run and it took 2 days, and in the meantime our competitors have promotions on today and we can't turn around quickly and match those promotions, or it's difficult to get data out of the system. And so there's a lot of, whether it was mainframe or SAP and other things, these technologies in the past weren't always, I would say, the easiest to use or the most, again, the term that you used, agile, the most nimble. So a lot of grocers weren't crazy about their IT systems, right? And they're reluctant to go out and spend a whole bunch of money on a digital solution when their technology wasn't that great, right? The back end capabilities didn't exist, or they felt like the application wasn't quite as solid as what they had hoped. So you see the stats in front of you, right? 25% digital experience. That's how their satisfaction rating. Very low satisfaction ratings. The change that SAP has brought in the last number of years with S/4HANA, and what I would say specifically in the space around the usability of the tool and the ability for having handheld functionality in the stores, being able to go up and scan, use capabilities to be able to identify when you're out of product, or when you're if you are looking at quick turns so if you're trying to identify out of stock items quickly, if you're trying to provide information to a customer, if they ask for availability in the back room, if something's not on the shelf, do you have availability of this? Can it get delivered in the next day? Those types of technology improvements have come with S/4HANA. So I think if you think about what SAP was, or if your view of what SAP is based on a lens that you saw 10 years ago, it's much, much different today. The application is much more nimble. The application is much more user-friendly. And it also has a ton of flexibility in how to interact and how to integrate with non-SAP solutions. I think that's a big deal as we move forward.
Yeah. So, you're absolutely right about what I'm seeing about S/4HANA. And the interesting thing you said is like, what's on the shelf? One of my favorite questions is when I go to the grocery store, they say, "Did you find everything you were looking for?" And then I always wonder what they do with that information when I say, "No, I didn't. I didn't find XYZ." So
Right. So
perhaps
what's
we can
interesting
answer those
is,
questions now.
yeah, and that question in particular, you're right. I think it's almost like, you know, instead of saying, "Hi, how are you doing? I hope you had a good day." It's, to your point, did you find everything that you found? If nobody's taking any of that information, it doesn't, the question is really just,
Why
just there
bother?
just to be nice, right? So, but what we are seeing is that idea of getting customer feedback in store, whether it's, did you find everything that you were looking for? Are you happy with the prices that you saw today? Are you were you how was the parking lot experience? Did you buy online and pick up on store? Was the turnaround quick? Those types of questions are actually now, if you are using S4 and you're using some of the capabilities within the application, as well as being innovative on the actual application. And we can talk about the business technology platform in a little bit, but the idea that you can kind of extend your solution outside of the core functions within S4, you're able to collect that data and be able to use it effectively. And I think that more companies are starting to do that. What we're seeing in the field is people who use S4, not only are they, providing their business with a really strong foundation for functionality just on the things that you do day to day. You buy product, you get it into the distribution centers, you get it to the stores effectively, and then you merchandise it at the stores. Those functions are covered by SAP and covered by S/4HANA. The ability to extend capabilities beyond that for your business specifically is pretty strong.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. If SAP S/4HANA is the core, how does this all work? How do I really get value out of my system?
Right. I
Continuing
think
value, right? Because I think one of the things we often see is people build it and then they walk away from it like, okay, I got new technology now. That's it. That's
yeah,
the end of the story.
yeah, you are that's 100% right on, right? It's because in the past it was so monumental to implement SAP into ECC, and it's still an endeavor. There's no question about it. But the idea that you would spend 2 years implementing SAP, you'd go live, and that seemed like the end of your technology journey with SAP, right? That was the end
Right.
of that innovation, and what we're seeing now more than anything is it's the start of that, right? So the idea is you get to the core functions that SAP delivers. It's a clean core, meaning that you build the solution so that it's using standard SAP functionality. You're able to take advantage of all the innovation that SAP is going to bring you in the years to come. One of the things I like to talk to people about is the amount of investment that SAP makes each year in research and development. So the numbers are in the billions of dollars that SAP spends on innovation every year for their products. And if you move away from standard, if you move away from the SAP best practices, it's hard to take advantage of that spend that they make in research and development. So one of the key ideas and the what I talk to people about is implement SAP as it's designed to be implemented using standard functions. There's enough industry best practices in there for so many businesses, but specifically for grocery, that you can use the tools out of the box as part of the standard solution. Beyond that, if you have a solution that's let's say it's very unique in the fresh space, right? If you're talking about meats, fresh meats and produce and things like that, if there's something unique that you do in that space, you can innovate on the SAP BTP platform, the business technology platform, and create applications or create solutions just for that one part of your business that allows you to interact with S4. So use the same master data, use the same pricing elements, use the same vendor data throughout the whole application suite. And that application that you build or that you innovate on can use that same underlying core information, and you can customize it to make it work the way that you need it just for that one, line of business or that one category that you want to specialize in.
And how easy is it to do that, Darren? Like, is that, I'm from old school on premise, and developing the ABAP challenges could be, year and a half, 2 years before you made progress.
Yeah, so we're seeing terms a lot shorter than that, right? We are measuring some of those innovations in months and in weeks, maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks in some cases. You're seeing no code and low code solutions that are available that are able to be built. You're also then seeing some customized solutions that are a little bit more, I would say, robust and take a little bit longer to develop. You certainly aren't looking at a timeline of like a 2-year window to build a new application, right? That it's just not the case. The integration layer and the connectivity with BTP and S4 is built in. There's not a lot of learning there. It works out of the box in a lot of cases. It's not a pure I'll get a little bit technical here. It's not a pure ABAP stack, right? So it's not custom code from an SAP point of view. There's a Java stack that you can use to do this development on. So it's not, you don't have to have an in-house team of ABAP developers in order to custom build some applications. You can use some of the other skills that you have, some non-SAP code developers that you have. And it's also gives you flexibility to integrate or interact with non-SAP systems. So if, as an example, if I was trying to build a storefront application, I might be able to go out and get information from the internet, not necessarily from S4 or in addition to data from S4. So I have the ability to get information from not only built-in integration with S4, but with non-SAP systems, which gives, I think, a lot more flexibility to customers as they look at what they can and can't build.
That last part that you mentioned is really interesting, because it means that, we're all every business is trying to figure out what's someone else doing, what are they selling this for down the street. But there's such a vast amount of information on the internet, if you can pull that information, and that sounds incredible.
Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of capabilities, right? I think at the end of the day, BTP is a really strong thing that gives people the ability to innovate beyond their core, right? We want to talk about the core all the time, and I rightfully so. I think the application itself, S4, is more than enough for many customers to execute their day-to-day businesses, right? The best practices, again, in the grocery space are outstanding. And I feel like we talk a lot about that functionality, and rightfully so. That's the biggest expenditure. There's a number of, obviously, you have to implement it, all those other things. But beyond that, customers should be considering what they're doing beyond go live in order to make their business better. And the one thing, again, if I look at 2019, in the summer of 2019, no one was expecting the world to stop. And so as things come up, to have this tool, this framework, this platform out there that allows you to innovate on based on the changing needs of your business, I think is a pretty strong benefit for your business.
Yeah, but you just made a really good value prop statement to me, and that is that, with S4HANA, you're getting these best practices. So if we look at this slide that's up there now, I think what you're really getting is this functionality with best practices with S4HANA that you don't need BTP, but that helps get to the bigger value prop, I guess. But can we talk about some of what we do get just with the core? So I'm going to migrate to S4HANA. What does that mean?
Yeah, what does it mean? So it means a number of things. I think it means something a little different for ECC customers that are contemplating migrating into S4 versus a net new S4 customer. So let's talk a little bit about the migrating customers. One of the things that we heard early on from customers is maybe a certain level of frustration with the idea that they had to migrate, right? That they had to move to S4. I think that was there. My business is running well. What is in S4 that's different than what's in ECC that I have to go about this change, right? So I
It's
think
not broken. Let's not try to fix it.
that's right. So I think that was initially the frustration level. I think though that now as the products got more mature, and I think as customers are seeing the benefits of S4, right? So I think number one, the underlying HANA database and the speed and the ability to show everything real time. So in the past, you would have scenarios where your BW information would be the results of a whole day's worth of data movement into BW, so then you could report on. And you don't have that anymore. The ability to go into real time and from your actual application and pull this data out of S4 and be able to look at what the replenishment window is going to look like for a certain product, being able to identify trends in your stores in the Northeast, what stores are doing with which products. Are these promotions doing well in the markets that we are anticipating them doing? Are you able to see the sell-through of a certain basket of products? So those types of things, I think the real-time nature and the speed of that is a huge advantage now compared to what you used to see in ECC and some of the constraints that you had there. I think the idea from a best practice point of view is, every business that we speak to likes to think that they are unique in what they do day to day. And in reality, SAP has shown time and time again that that's not the case, that there is some industry best practices in the way that you procure products, in the way that you list or sell products, right? So there are some variations, but most customers don't differentiate. From our point of view, most clients don't differentiate themselves in their AP processes, right? They're the way that I pay a vendor. You shouldn't move away from the standard process for that. It's pretty straightforward whether you're grocer A or grocer B. What we really want to get people to understand is there is so much functionality within S4 to focus on your core business. Those core business processes can be supported by S4 right out of the box in standard. So where we see that is not only in the functionality, but now in the new, I would say, in the user interface in people who are familiar with the ECC terminology, but the GUI or the user interface has kind of developed and morphed into now these Fiori applications that are easy to access, whether on your phone, on your desktop, wherever. Look and feels the same. The reduction of clicks is immense. So just the usability of the solution, even if the functionality was exactly the same, the usability of that functionality is improved greatly. So I think what our customers continuously tell us is, even where there was not any innovation from the SAP product, the usability has made it worthwhile and reduce or increase the efficiency of our users, and decrease the things for missing data, things that weren't there in order to execute certain transactions. Those types of reductions in error and things like that have been immense. The big thing for me though is, from a functionality point of view, in the profitability and in the FI space, there's been a number of different improvements, I think, to the way the solution behaves today than it did in ECC. And what we are seeing consistently is the adoption of these new business processes and in the finance space has really made this transformation worthwhile for a lot of customers.
I think, these best practices, SAP, by the way, has talked about that for years, even in the on-premise model. But I think what's different today is the database. It's actually built better, right? But also they have years and years of experience working with customers to get it right and to meet needs. So it's pretty powerful.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, I like the idea obviously SAP is going to come through and they're going to continue to innovate. The best practices that we used to see 10 years ago has changed, right? 10 years ago, there wasn't really a best practice for buy online, pick up in store, that process, or drop ship
Right.
directly to the stores. Those types of things weren't part of the vernacular, I think, really, in most industries. So that's changed. I just think the application has continued to mature and develop. So things where, you know, there were times I used to stand in front of customers and say, sorry, that's not part of the solution. That is very, very rare now compared to what it was even 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable. Let's talk about supply chain, because I have to tell you honestly, I never gave a thought to supply chain until my grocery store's shelves were empty of pasta, rice, and flour.
Yep. Yeah, so I think obviously the supply chain, right, is the backbone of all these successful businesses, right? Being able to buy products that you're going to store and subsequently sell. The most essential part of that is getting those products from the vendor or from the location that you're getting them, and getting them into your stores and getting them as efficiently and as quickly as possible. So that supply chain, and we saw it at the end of the pandemic with the supply chain issues were around the world. A lot of the products sourced from overseas weren't able to get into North American retailers. And we saw that as well in just an inflation of the costs of that supply chain. It just jumped up like crazy based on a number of different factors. But what we're seeing in with our customers is the supply chain has to be flexible. It has to, there's some, I don't want to say redundancy, but you have to be able to change. If something's not available, you have to be quickly able to rewrite those products in a different fashion. So that that flexibility in your supply chain is pretty important. SAP spent a lot of time on the solution, being able to provide tools and visibility for an increase in costs all of a sudden in the supply chain. Let's say that there was some delays in your international shipping, like the ability to reroute products to get them to the stores quicker used to be very, very, very difficult. SAP has built a lot of tools to be able to improve those functions. And I think you have to, the methods to get products into the stores, instead of having to go through a DC that might take a couple days to that, the ability to do direct shipments into stores, the ability to get products from alternative vendors if they're like maybe you usually get products from the West Coast or an East Coast grocer, the ability to look and find alternative solutions or alternative vendors for those products, maybe closer, to be able to get those quickly. Those types of functions within S4 have improved immensely, and I think it gives our clients the ability to have a more robust supply chain, and I would say a more adaptable supply chain, which is really important.
Yeah, that whole supply chain thing, I imagine, impacts that freshness and shelf life pillar that's so important to grocery as well. That has got to be a pretty tough thing to control.
Yeah, so I think, when you think of the best grocery stores that you go to, one of the first things out of consumers' mouths is the freshness of their produce, right?
Yeah,
How when they walked in, like that's the, I
that's
think,
the first thing you
in
see.
everybody's, yeah, I think in everybody's mind, that is what you judge your grocery store by, right? How fresh is your produce? How fresh is the meats that you're getting? So I think, the middle of the grocery store and all the goods that you might, home goods and all those types of things, but that fresh area is absolutely key to the success of that store. And you have to, it's one thing to have, fresh products. It's another thing to have a large selection of those fresh products, right? So it's not just how many apples do you have, but do you have apples, oranges, bananas, and grapes, right? Like you have to have all of that stuff.
Right.
And I think the solution in S4 does a tremendous job of giving, I think, cues and giving ideas to the client about the health of that supply chain, get that freshness chain to get it into the store. So you get warnings, and there's workflow, and there's actionable details in S4 that will tell you, hey, we normally buy green beans. These green beans are we're not getting as much, let's say, vendor updates from the vendor. Maybe we got to look for other vendors for that. There's the ability to track your inbound shipments from vendors or from the DC to the stores. That visibility is very, very important, and it allows store managers the idea to know exactly when they're going to get their products, if they're behind, what they can do about it, what they can do to try and escalate before they're late for products. If you know in advance you're going to be late, what are your alternatives about it? It helps with inventory visibility. It also helps with promotions. If you know if you have a feeling what your promotional uplift is going to be, then you need to obviously plan for that and have more products. So I think that there's all those functions are very, very important. But to me, honestly, I know that I might be a little bit biased, but I really judge what it's like, what a store looks like based on their fresh area. And I think I'm not alone in that. And I think that most grocers take pride in what's being offered to their customers, right? It's an important part of who they want to be, and it's important for their customers to walk in and feel like this is a great place to be to spend the next hour or so shopping.
Yeah, I totally agree. And by the way, that's something, fresh produce, you can't really rely on Instacart to get for you. My
Right.
experience tells me. Any of these other pillars of optimization that, Darren, you'd like to talk about, and how SAP S/4HANA is skilled in addressing these?
Yeah, I think to me so analytics and insight is sort of embedded into the solution. So and I just realized I had a little play on terms there. So within SAP, within S4, they kind of out of the box analytics is called embedded analytics. But to me, the solution of the analytics cloud application from SAP that kind of goes hand in hand with S4, it builds in those insights and that analytics into everyday transaction sets, right? So for those of you who are kind of used to the ECC, you run a transaction and then you go over to a completely different set of transactions or reports to actually see what your reports are.
Right.
S4 embeds a lot of those analytics and a lot of those insights directly into the transaction. So for instance, if I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, store number 123 is going to be shorted by 100 pounds of bananas over the next 2 days, right from that analytics or right from that insight, I can create a purchase order or expedite an existing purchase order right from that transaction set. So in my dashboard, I have the ability, that's all one thing. I can not only see my insights and see where I'm potentially short or potentially where I have too much, I can then action those very quickly. If I have too much of a product in store A and another one's within a driving distance, I can create transfers right from that insight page to be able to move that inventory quickly. So the whole idea of analytics cloud embedded directly with S4, it's pretty powerful. I think obviously there's more functions within analytics cloud around some planning applications and so on, but SAP's done a really, I believe, really strong job in developing that analytics cloud application such that it is once we demonstrate to customers, they maybe hadn't really considered having this application as part of their solution roadmap. But once we've sat with customers and we've talked through the benefits of analytics cloud, they invariably opt to include that as part of their solution set.
Yeah, you can have the data, but if you can't get the data out and make decisions with it,
That's right.
valuable.
Yeah, it really shows, I think, the maturity of S4 versus ECC. I think that this area of having insights and being able to action them quickly right within that insight transaction set is pretty powerful. The last thing I think I'll touch on is the loyalty and customer experience, right? So again, the idea that one of the biggest trends that we're seeing again is this idea that customers, it's important for grocers to listen to their customer base. And, you know, as an example, it used to be that vendors would kind of create the promotion schedule and determine, hey, we're going to put this product A on, and we'll talk to the grocer and we'll offer a promotion for this. But if the customers didn't really care about that, then they were putting things on promotion and to benefit the vendor to get rid of product rather than that's what the customer wanted, right?
Yeah.
So what we're seeing now is a huge increase, and again, I think this is an output of the pandemic. We're seeing customers in store and actually interact with the grocery companies in store more often than we had in the past. So I don't know if it's because people were cooped up for 2 years and they want to go in and tell their neighborhood grocery employee what they're missing or what they have or what they don't have. But there's just been an increase in interaction between the consumer and the grocer, and it's not just grocery. We've seen this in a number of other retailers. So what we really need to start to do, I think, as a technology company and working with our clients, is be able to give them tools that can take that information and actually make it actionable, right? So whether it's surveys or whether it's just feedback, like just direct feedback, those types of tools, being able to give them to people to be able to action those. So if you have a promotion and it was only on for 3 days and a whole bunch of customers come in and say, oh, that's terrible, it would have been great to be on for a week, that feedback actually is used, right? So the next time that you run that promotion, you've got all this feedback that says, hey, don't run it for 3 days, run it for 7 days or whatever, you know, that type of feedback we want to be able to take. And then the experience, again, the whole idea of all this technology should always be to improve the customer experience in your store or online. It shouldn't be because it's cool technology. It should always have a purpose, and the purpose should always be customer driven. You should always look for the reason that we're implementing S4, or the reason that we're implementing this application for analytics, or the reason that we're doing this integration into the internet should only be because the customer, it's going to make his or her experience better. And when we do that, we make the right decisions on how to invest our money, right? On our IT investments.
Yeah, absolutely true. I'll tell you what I love. My grocery store that I use with their loyalty program. So I told you I don't like to go into the store, right? So I go on my app and I order the things that I want, and it tells me, it makes suggestions. It says, this is what you usually buy. And I'm like, that is genius. And it'll tell me if it's in stock or not, or it'll offer other suggestions. It's great. Yeah. Big time saver. Cost me more.
Like you want to, again, the customer experience. So whether it's in store or online, you want to create the industry term is frictionless, right? You want to be able to create an experience for the buyer, for the consumer, that says, I can go in and if I want to, I can be in and out. So whether that's online, or I can run into the store and run back out again, or I can linger and look through all the different aisles and do all those things. But every time that I interact with that consumer, it's a positive experience, right? And it's frictionless. Right. It's not hard to go to my store and buy some apples. It's not hard to go and get a cartload of food. Both of those things should be both positive experiences, whether I spend, if I have a full cart with 400 items or I have a cart with 2 items, both of those experiences should be pleasurable for the consumer. And what we want people to look at is, how can I use the technology that SAP is delivering in order to make those experiences as frictionless as possible?
And Darren, what if the shopper has 5 children tagging along?
Then it's never so for the record, it's never the 2, like I never have a cart with 2 items in it. I always have a cart with 400 items in it. It's always the latter. But I mean, it's very true. Like even so, my kids are a little bit older now, but it used to be an experience to go through with my wife and with when it was just all seven of us of age that we would all go to the store together. Like it would be a 2-hour event to
Oh
go to the
yeah.
grocery store. And some of the littler kids would be hanging off the cart. And I'm sure we were like the awful consumer where kids were running around and knocking stuff off the shelves and things like that. But I think when I think about those things, to be honest, it was both my wife and I look back, it was a fantastic opportunity and experience to take the kids to the grocery store. It was always, and it's one of the things I have a soft spot in my heart for grocery because I always saw it as a family event, right? It was always a family thing. And that's the type of experience you want your customers to have. I don't want to go, I don't want my store to be a place where my kids don't want to go. They loved going to the grocery store because they'd be able to get treats, and my wife would be able to give them, probably should have given them an apple. Maybe I gave them treats and popcorn instead. But I think it was that experience, and which has been a challenge for a lot of customers, and I think you highlighted it, is now they're starting to find ways to make the online experience pleasurable, right? It's cool when you order 5 things and somebody advises you and said, oh yeah, you're right, I did like, I'm going to show my Canadianness here. I did like I did like ketchup potato chips, and now that's showing up on my app, right? I did like, I forgot that 3 times ago I bought this pumpkin pie, and now I'm glad you reminded me that I can add it to my cart. So those types of experiences that we're seeing online are so much better today than they were in the past.
They sure are. So what's next? What do you see as next in the grocery industry?
Yeah, so our customers are telling us a number of things. Number one is that the economic cycle is slowing down, I think, for sure. I think what we're seeing is customers and grocers need to find ways, because people are going to continue to buy grocery, right? It's not a luxury good. It's a need that you have to do. But what we're seeing is some customers are looking at it as, hey, I have to slow down innovation. And other customers are looking at it a way to create themselves, make it a differentiation for them, and investing in innovation in this time window, right? And saying, hey, maybe it's a good idea to spend more on ways to get home delivery, as an example, or these types of things, and make it easier for the customer that in a slower economic time, maybe it's not, maybe the idea that you'll have more home delivery than with a lower delivery costs than having people get into a car and drive to the store and then back again, right? I think you're seeing that some customers in different industries, as soon as you have an economic slowdown, they cut as much sort of cost as possible. And what we're seeing for what I would consider leading edge grocers is that's not the case. They're not taking this opportunity to reduce their IT spend. They're looking for ways to be smart about it. They're looking for things that will improve that experience, because they still want to be an improvement on experience for customers. So what applications can I, in my IT spend, in my IT budget, can I leverage to make that experience better? And an S4 move, I think, obviously it's not a cheap investment. It's not like you're spending $20 and it's a SAP S4 is a large part of your budget. But what they're seeing is we need to really differentiate ourselves. If customers are going to be cost conscious, we really need to differentiate ourselves in order to drive traffic into to our store or to our online site. And what makes us different? So I think that is a big trend. The other thing is, again, this interaction and loyalty. I think I'm not sure that there's any store out there, a chain out there that doesn't have some sort of loyalty product. But I think what you'll see is improvement of those programs and the data behind it in S4 and tracking that information for grocers will be worth the investment. So if you're able to track the purchases of your consumers, you're able then to leverage that information on what promotions you run, what products you have at what time of the year. That type of thing I think is very important for grocers. And the final thing I think from what's next is you have to be flexible, right? There's a lot of, again, you use the term agile right at the beginning, and in IT, there's this term for agile products and stuff like that. But for me, the business has to be agile. There's been enough evidence of how quickly consumers move from one kind of idea to the next and how progressive they can be, that I think it's very important for our customers to be as flexible and agile as possible. I think being on the S4 platform and using BTP to kind of innovate on top of, I think puts people in the best shape that they can possibly be to react and in some cases to be proactive in how to innovate and provide customer loyalty and satisfaction to those customers.
Sounds like it's no longer a nice to have, but an imperative to survive and keep up with the competition.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably a little biased, right? But I think that's true, right? I think.
Well, listen, if I didn't have my mobile app, I would still go out and buy groceries. But
that's right.
I love the mobile app.
Yeah, but that's actually a fantastic point, right? So you would still go out and buy groceries. The idea, though, is that I won't use the names, but I have one grocery store that's about 2 miles from my house, another one that's 5 miles from my house. If the one that's 5 miles away gives me a better online experience, and the only thing I need to do is drive those 3 extra miles to pick it up and drive home, then I might pick that one.
Yeah.
Right. So that idea that I can have a better experience at location A versus location B is, I think, essential to the success of a grocery company. And I think the idea that you're going to out innovate your competitor is a pretty important part of what's going to happen in the next 2 years. And I think, with AI and with leveraged into the SAP solution, whether it's with all the AI tools and machine learning and all these things that are available through the S4 platform, I think you're going to see a lot more automations offered. I think you're going to see a lot more, I don't want to say chat GPT for grocers, but you're going to see a lot of AI. You're going to see a lot of the idea being that data will drive decision-making on purchasing and pricing rather than, hey, I think this should sell for $1.19, or my gut tells me this should sell for $1.19, to use the data to drive those pricing decisions. I think you're going to see that in the next couple of years. I think you're going to see the idea that data-driven and technology-driven decisions on products that you buy that are made available, as well as pricing and I think some things that are customer centric. I think that's going to be a lot more part of the day-to-day operations for grocers in the next couple of years. And certainly S4, being on the S4 platform, gives you the capability to do that and take advantage of that functionality.
Yeah, certainly does. So I think that's all we have for today, unless, Darren, of course, there's anything else that you didn't get to tell us about that you'd like to talk about. I'd like to encourage our audience to connect with us. The link to our page is right there on this slide, rising.com/grocery. You can connect with Darren himself, and there's also a little QR code there. They're all the rage now, right? Everywhere. So if you scan that little QR code on your screen, that'll take you right to our site, and where you can get more information or request a download of our ebooks and white papers. Thank you all for participating. Darren, thank you so much. This has really been fun, more fun than grocery shopping, and quicker too.
I appreciate the time. I think, this topic, I think from a Rising point of view, we want to be able to help as many grocers in this space. I know there's SAP is certainly front of mind for a lot of different grocery-based companies, and we want to be able to be the people who can give you, industry expertise and things like that, not just a pure technology view of how things go. We certainly have a lot of industry expertise, and people that work for us have come from industry, and I think that's a reason why we are in the position that we're in. We have a lot of customers in this space that continuously come back to Rising because of our industry expertise as well as our SAP product knowledge.
And I'll give my plug too. It's one of the reasons I chose to work with Rising, because the people here genuinely do love what they do. They love at the SAP space, but they also are experts in the industries that we specialize in. And so, yes, it's a good company.
All right, very good.
Thank you, everybody. Bye for now.